Hello and welcome back to What Was That? Nitesh is deep in his influencer era. He's traveling to remote Rajasthan with a Rode mic and an Insta 360 camera. That is as influencer as you can get, Nitesh.
I'm going to do a vox pop after this. Ask random villagers what they think about whatever.
अभी कैसा लग रहा है? What are the hidden gems in?
Oh God. No, 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 not that bad, but I do have thoughts. I'm here after a good 3 years. Here is a small district in Western Rajasthan, and it's been 3 years since my last trip. Incidentally, it was around the same time of the year, and at least partly it must be because I'm paying more attention to these things. But I see an uptick in the the quality of the roads and everything, of course, that is there, but more so in, how do I put this, people here seem to have more agency now than they did since I last remember. At least 70% I'd attribute this to my faulty memory and romanticizing things as this being in the middle of bumfuck nowhere, but it is.
But people romanticize the past. You are romanticizing the present.
So here's where I landed on this. I've been thinking about this all morning in anticipation of the recording, and this is an underdeveloped area. It historically has been, and that's the reason en masse people have migrated away from here to other cities and now other countries because यहाँ पे opportunities नहीं थी. That's how it has been historically. And so you have, like in Kerala, even in this village, you have row after row of empty mansions because the people who built them, maybe they were born here or their parents were born here, and so they यहाँ पे अभी भी घर है but nobody lives here. So it's a part of it is like a ghost village, like the famous ghost villages of Kerala. But then there is another part that is thriving, is of the people who haven't left, who are still here, who make their livelihood here. And so there are schools and all the infrastructure that they need, and a sizable population too. And for the longest time, like for a good 30 years of visiting here, right up to my last visit, it was always, the impression was that we were in a seriously underdeveloped area, and now for the first time it feels a little different. The caste issues are still there, they haven't gone anywhere. I'm not an expert on that, I have not done any study, so I'm not going to comment on it, except to say that that it's not all rosy. अचानक से सब better नहीं हो गया है, but the oh god, can I use a horrible corporate expression? I'm seeing
Are we
green
circling
shoots.
back?
I'm
You're
seeing
seeing
green
green
shoots.
shoots.
Yeah, I really am.
Uh,
And the
you should apply.
agricultural.
You should move there and apply blue ocean strategies. Circle back in a few years.
I'm trying to say something nice here. Why are you shitting all over it?
I have to shit on LinkedIn. I have to shit on LinkedIn. That is just a part of my personality.
So there's mechanization of farming here. I saw sprinklers here for the first time, which are
That's
way
very cool.
more water
No,
efficient.
genuinely.
Yeah, and they're being used with microcontrollers and timers, and it's really cool. And this has nothing to do with government incentives or whatever. This is just people realizing that this is a good investment, and it felt nice. And interacting with the traders and the shopkeepers here in the limited time that I've been here, they, like I said, there's a sense of more agency than 3 years back. There's more self-assuredness, like there is with Lenscart employees. When you go in there, if you ask for an SLO, they say, no, no, we have something better. And it isn't coming from a place of trying to sell you their product. They actually believe, they have the confidence that their products are better, whether they are or not. They believe it, and I'm seeing a bit of that same vibe here. We know how it affects us. We have the best materials, the best of all of that. Now, fascinatingly, the hoardings and things that you see here are all still from the large conglomerates. It's not like there's micro brands that operate here in any space except FMCG. FMCG में है अभी भी, But like paints and all, you still have the JKs and the paints and all, but they have a separate line for the rural supply chain. So the names are familiar, the brands are not, and there's there's a lot more choice in shops in the markets than I remember for the longest time. It's
That's
really
genuinely
cool.
very cool to hear. That's very cool. Yeah.
This is fucking Vikas in the flesh. I am
Don't be
surprised.
fucking fast.
Presently,
Yeah, yeah.
what? That's what it is.
But that's very cool. That is genuinely really, really cool to hear.
Yeah, I
Because there is
was
an assumption that the villages are getting totally left behind and all. Maybe that's just my city elitism speaking, but this is
exactly.
very cool to hear. There's movement, there's agency, there's positive development happening.
Yeah.
Nice. I still
Again,
won't go to West Rajasthan in April to see that,
it's not
but
so
good for you.
bad. It's not so bad. Seriously, it's not. Just
Yeah,
stay
Delhi's
out of
quite
the
bad.
sun. Stay out of the sun
Mhm.
for those peak 2 3 hours, and you're good.
Story one. Let us begin.
One
What
last
is your
thing
story?
before I get to
Yes,
that. The heat is more than made up for by the quality of the food here, of just the fruits and the vegetables, if nothing else. It more than
I
makes up.
went to Jodhpur last month and there were no fruits and vegetables. There was basin and there was basin and there was oil.
Yeah, but that's because you were a tourist, no? I'm a quasi native.
Fair. I went to the local hotspots and I know there were local hotspots because everything was like one fourth the price
Right.
of the tourist spots. But there was oil, there was dairy, and there was basin, and there were no veggies.
Hmm. Okay. No,
But then I
I
don't
haven't
know food.
had I haven't had any fried food since I got here. So
I don't know food. I don't give. Do not take gastronomical advice. Do not take dietary advice. Do not take nutritional advice. I can't even say the word. Do not take any advice from me.
all right, story
Story
time.
one.
Yeah,
Yes.
my first story is not so much a story as just a continuation of the broader themes that we have been discussing for the past week or so. After months and months of there being net outflows of funds from the markets, if you even like regular mainstream media and not just the financial media had started covering how much of daily FII outflows have started happening. You know how much foreign institutional investors are pulling money out of the Indian markets. That seems to have turned finally in the last week or so. And whether it is a longer term trend or just the money being confused and not knowing where to go right now because of everything that's happening in the US, not sure. But money has started to come back to India. I
That's interesting. So net inflows. I too have completely given up on the market. Like I'll be hearing news like this stock, this company has reported so and so downturn in profits and blah blah blah, and stock is up. And this is happening in the markets, and there's chaos, and markets are up. I have given up. I have no idea what's going on.
it's all about sentiment, no? Yeah, there's a very famous Gujarati saying in the Bombay stock market, "Bhav Bhagwan che." So sentiment rules everything else. You might post terrible numbers, but if the market was expecting worse numbers than that, you might actually get a bounce. Which, incidentally, is what
Fair.
happened with Tesla this week. It was all bad news everywhere, but just because Musk said, "All right, I realize I've taken my eyes off the ball here. I'm going to start paying more attention to the company." On probably the worst numbers the company has ever posted since its meteoric rise, the stock was up, which,
And
of
still
course,
trading at a PE. I think it's trading at a PE of 5 million.
this isn't investing advice, but it is interesting to see. No? You can do the worst thing possible as a listed company and just not spook the market, but actually get it back on your side. Oh, Musk knows that he's where he needs to focus his energies. In the short term, in the here and now, sentiment does matter. It does make a difference. No.
Indeed.
Like you have the FII money coming back. There were reports that this is panic money that is fleeing from the US and needs to find a new home. And so it was a Bloomberg article, I think, that said that it's going to end up in India and China. And specifically, it's going to go for FMCG companies which are more inward looking. There aren't so many international linkages compared to, say, an exporter of assembled phones or whatever. So that was the thesis that was floated in an article I vaguely remember reading, probably in Bloomberg. And in fact, Unilever this week, this is results week, results season, and it's an important result because it's the end of the financial year as well. So next year, the forecasting and all comes into the picture here. Unilever, which is the largest FMCG
Hmm.
company, they guided that they're guiding for lower margins in the coming quarters because they are focusing on increasing sales. Which has it gone down because they're losing market share to newer brands, or is it because overall consumption is down? There are mixed messages in the market, which contradicts what I just told you that I'm seeing here on the ground. So I don't know. Anything's possible.
Anything is absolutely possible. Bond prices, will Indian bond prices rise?
Indian bond prices have actually weakened a bit along with markets. Technically, SEBI has said we can't discuss current markets. We need to use old price data. There's no clarity on this, so I'll refrain from commenting on it specifically. But in general, there is increased inflow, but then it doesn't seem like it's part of a broader trend. It's just we really don't know. The whole financial world is in stasis. We don't know which way it's going to turn. It's like a panicky animal that's been pushed into a corner, and it might bite, it might jump, run away. No one knows. Honestly, no one knows.
I love how we're talking about markets this way. Panicky animal that might bite, that might jump. Excellent. That's just the kind of stability that everyone looks forward to when they want to park their money.
Yeah, but seriously,
Just
that's where we
there
are.
is a savings बैंक सर आपका सेविंग्स बैंक में हम सेविंग्स अकाउंट में 5% देंगे एंड पैनिकी एनिमल दैट माइट बाइट माइट जंप में 6% देंगे आप क्या चाहेंगे सर
Right now there's so much chop in the markets that there's chop in the news articles also. And this isn't contained only to Bloomberg or Financial Times or Economic Times or whatever. Everybody, the financial media can't seem to make up their mind of where they stand vis-a-vis, whether it's the American bond market or the Indian equity market or the Indian small cap space. Have we bottomed out? Is it a good time for this sector or bad? There's there's no consensus. No. So again, that itself is not a very good indicator. No one knows in which direction we are headed. Even the smart money doesn't know where we are headed at the moment. They may be, from what I can gather, a week ahead of the rest of us. Maybe. And some cases, even then, they tend to be caught on the wrong foot when there are
I think it
certain
is time for a
signals.
shitcoin. Let's do it.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
What do we call it? A shitcoin, an Indian shitcoin. Trying to
Don't
think of a nice backgronym for TATTI. No, I will talk later.
don't go there, man.
Total annualized tertiary something investment. No, but okay, why not? I will.
What's
My
your
story one.
story? Yeah.
This was going to be my story too, but since we're on automotive anyhow,
Mm-hmm.
there is a new car company offering a new car to the American market. It's called Slate. Just came out yesterday, in fact, their first ad. And Slate is an interesting name. SLATE, 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 SLA. It's a very interesting name for a company, for a new car company. They have launched software style a completely unbundled car, a $20,000 car after subsidies,
Mm-hmm.
which has a tiny range, 150 miles. Well, tiny by 250 kilometers is great range
Right.
actually for most city dwellers. $20,000 after subsidies, and it doesn't even come with paint. It doesn't come with a head unit for entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't come with speakers. Only comes in grey. The only way to listen to music while driving is if you bring along your phone and a Bluetooth speaker. And everything is available, but for a price.
As options. Okay.
as options. You have an SUV upgrade kit that will bolt onto the back of the truck,
Oh, nice.
adding extra crash protection and rear seats with seat belts to match. Everything is user manageable. You can attach this at home.
Nice.
This is an
So,
interesting one. They say that 70% of repeat warranty claims are based on infotainment because there's so much tech in the car that's creating a very unstable environment in the vehicle and causing issues. Like we discussed car warranties last time. So yeah, it's gotten a lot of hype on social media, but then one ad, it's a nice ad, funny ad. Uh, but this is the first time I'm seeing this level of unbundling to make the car really cheap and not really cheap because you will end up getting so much stuff on top. But you can choose. It's the
right.
Indigo model that's come to cars. Though, of course, I will say that Indigo is not cheap. Indigo is just unbundled.
Hmm.
It is practically the same price as Air India, but that's a different story altogether. So, yeah, first unbundled car for the US market.
I have so many thoughts. First, this is a full circle moment because before the Model T, before assembly lines, that's how you bought cars, right? You just bought the chassis and the engine, and then you took it to a coach maker, and you could decide if you wanted a coupe or a sedan or whatever. And the coach makers would then make one for you. This is when cars were uber luxury items, and Henry Ford democratized that. So this is a nice closing of the circle moment. Second, there was a similar trend in smartphones before the iPhone came out. In that
Hmm?
brief window when BlackBerry was still dying, but the iPhone wasn't here yet, you had Android phones which had, like, you could decide if you want to upgrade the camera unit or you want a bigger battery. And these were small brands out of Shenzhen who were doing these before the Micromaxes of the world went there and bought in bulk, actually
Oh man,
concurrently.
Micromax, and I haven't heard in so long. Oh wow, Micromax, that brings back memories.
So that's what Micromax did, right? They went to Shenzhen and
Hmm.
they inquired, or they found out what are the most innovative things that these guys are doing. Like somebody had managed to retrofit an FM radio chip into a smartphone, and they said, "Yeah, that'll do great in the Indian hinterland." So they brought in a mobile handset with FM, and it was a big deal, and it worked, and just features like that. So, anyways, we're getting sidetracked, but this was a thing in smartphones for a brief shining moment before the iPhone came and just trammeled everything. Third, regulations. How does this affect crash testing? How will the company navigate this? Like, where are they? Are they at the Kickstarter stage where here's a cool concept, give us money, and we'll maybe go out and build it, or have they raised any
There's
money?
no release date yet. There's no date yet as to when it will go live. They just say 3 years in development.
They
When
have
the video
been
does look like video.
right, right. So yeah, sounds
But
cool.
we do remember examples like not Rivian. Which one was that where the car was just floating, the truck was just
The
floating down the
truck,
road and this.
yeah, which
That was not Rivian. That was Nicola.
the company that was killed by Hindenburg. It's such a cool
No
story.
comment.
It's so sad that most people here found out about Hindenburg after Dani because they did some really cool shit before that.
They did
This
some really
was
cool
the
stuff.
most famous and the most fun example
Hmm.
where they just stood in front of all the hype that Nikola had created and said, "No, bullshit." Just that. That was really cool. So yeah, great concept. I don't know how scalable it is.
Does
What does
everything
it
need to be
say?
scalable?
What does it say about me that
Honestly,
I would find this more believable if it was coming out of China? That it might be more realistic. Terrifying, no?
no, China would not do this for $20,000. For $20,000, China would give you a very souped up car.
Yeah, and it's easier to execute this in electric cars because most of them are on the skateboard anyways. Like you have the cell architecture and you build the car around that. It works really well in that sense. Like there'll be fewer manufacturing complexities than say if you're building an internal combustion engine. Like Jaguar Land Rover, for example, has put in like billions of dollars to develop a platform that would work both with Jaguar and Land Rover, which finally didn't quite happen. But it's really difficult to have an architecture that works. for multiple styles. Volkswagen has done that well, executed that well. They were the first company, I think, to do that, to have an architecture that works across body styles and across markets and across regulations, because it's really complicated. The emission norms are different in different countries. Not that Volkswagen cares, but we didn't know that then. The crash safety norms are different in different countries. So it's nice if they can crack that for electric cars. It would be cool to see.
And it's actually a truck that is smaller than the rest. So finally, there's movement towards a compact
Yeah.
city truck. But somebody asked, like, why do you need a truck? And people on Twitter will always be answering, I need to go to the grocery store and get veggies in a truck.
I read a pretty insightful Reddit comment on this. I have not done the research to know if it's true, but it rings about right. In the US, the once your passenger vehicle crosses a certain threshold, it moves into a different weight class, like boxers, and it needs to meet a different set of emission norms, which aren't as strict. So auto manufacturers are pushing larger trucks because it's easier for them to lesser regulatory overhead in the emissions part, which is a big
So
part
it's
of,
the opposite of the Indian market, where excise determines that the
yeah,
car has to be a
smaller
certain
cars.
size, so the boot will just end like this, like flat, like where's the rest of the car?
Yeah,
Right.
great
Oh,
catch
that's
because of
interesting.
the sub 4 meter rule. Yeah, good point. So
By the way, speaking
same.
of Chinese stuff, I decided to upgrade my phone. I
Uh huh.
bought a Chinese Xiaomi last year flagship on OLX,
Nice.
and he said reserve edition. I'm like, whatever does that mean? And then there were photos on OLX. I'm
Hmm.
getting somewhere with this story. There were photos on OLX of the box. I'm like, okay, there's a regular phone box, and there's like this is something bigger, like a reserve edition. This is the box the phone came.
Did it also come with a limited edition whiskey bottle or something? That's how it looks.
There were just two extra phone cases in there. Just two extra phone cases in this. एंड ही इज लाइक सर हाँ मैंने भी वो अमेजोन से ऑर्डर करा था एंड घर पे ये 4.5 किलो का डब्बा आया आई एम लाइक व्हाट या सो द चाइनीज आर ट्राइंग टू फिगर हाउ टू मार्केट टू द इंडियंस
Very cool, very cool.
नाइस
And
फैंसी थिंग
meanwhile, Apple doesn't give us charging breaks because ecological reasons.
दिस इज द ऑपोजिट ऑफ दैट vegan leather but
And that's
why
the SUV, or that's a Ford F-150 of cell phone boxes.
yeah
Very
maybe
nice.
they get more relaxed regulations if the box is 4.5 kgs
Very cool. Share the link in the show notes. I'd also like to check out this modular car. All
story
right.
number 2
Story two. What do we have? The hypothesis, again, I'm going to stick with the same narrative. The hypothesis was that money is leaving the US, and naturally some of it will come to India, and a big chunk of it should end up in China. Institutional managers are not sure yet whether the money should end up there. Although consensus has been, not investing advice, consensus has been that Chinese stocks are beaten down to a level where they're, some of them, if you're ready to do the due diligence, are incredible bargains. But still, institutional money is not convinced that en masse it should be moving to China. Concurrently, Vanguard. Have you heard of Vanguard? Have we discussed Vanguard?
we haven't discussed it
Okay, so Bogle, who founded Vanguard, he said, great guy, great story. Yeah, he said, all of you, the entire active money manager industry put together, you can't outperform the index over a 20 or a 30-year period, barring a handful of you guys. So rather than trying to chase alpha, which is earning more than the market or more than the benchmark, why not just be okay with the benchmark and not have any expense, not hire these expensive managers who
Hmm.
tend to keep most of the alpha that they generate in the good years anyways, and in the bad years you get the short end of the stick. And he said, he started Vanguard and said, we only do passive, we just do index funds, nothing else. There are no genius money managers, no stock pickers, none of that. You have different funds which track different indexes, and that's it. And they manage trillions of dollars of money. Really cool guy. His his thesis has proven out in the last 20, 30 years, at least in the US market. It has been argued that developing markets are not efficient enough yet to justify a completely passive strategy, because the the potential for alpha is much larger in developing markets, because the markets are not as efficient. They don't price in a company's full potential yet. They don't price in shocks as well as efficiently. My story is that Vanguard is expanding globally, but they still said that they're going to stay away from China for the time being. The reason that they have given, which yeah sounds true to me, true enough at least, is that they found in the limited time that they spent there that Chinese investors don't have a long enough time horizon for this to bear out. They're probably right, but I would also argue that it's because the market isn't efficient enough yet. Just like in the Indian market, you see inefficiencies here. You see major news like what happened last week. Major news takes a day or two to affect markets.
Hmm.
The day after the event, markets were all right. It took 2 full days for the market to understand that, because normally, what would happen, like around the time of the Iraq invasion by the US, around the time that they decided to blow Afghanistan out of existence for some reason, immediately defense stocks would go up. Immediately, the market did not need more than a few minutes or a few hours to price it in completely. That these are the sectors that are going to do well, these are the sectors that are going to do badly, and that repricing happened immediately in the US markets. यहाँ पे I was surprised because
Hmm.
when nothing happened the next day, I thought, okay, the markets are either discounting this, or they believe that, as unfortunate as it is, it's not going to affect the economy in any way, which is surprising, right? Because uncertainty is what causes price movements, and this is like one of the biggest tail events that you can have, that what happens if things escalate. And so there should have been fear in the markets, but it wasn't there on the very next day. The charitable explanation would be that the markets were still processing it, that people were coming to terms with it on a human level first, and then it took another day for the markets to react. But it's not a great explanation, I think. So yes, there are inefficiencies here. Let me bring it back. Passive funds are good for developed markets, but for developing markets, maybe Vanguard should wait a little bit longer before they do enter China and start offering their products to Chinese investors. I think they are not there yet, because I've seen the same erratic movements in the Chinese market also, where they take a day or two to price in major events, and not so much the direction as the extent of it, of how worried they should be or how optimistic they should be. It does take time for that to happen, whereas the US market is just instantaneous. Maturity of the markets, maturity of the players, the depth of analyst coverage, the yeah, just that there isn't yet that much research resources pointed towards Indian companies. There's a lot of money in the market, but not enough is used for the actual research of it. We don't have even a fraction of the analysts that we need or deserve to actually look at the books of small cap stocks. And there'll be a handful, there'll be two or three guys, it's the same guys asking questions in every earnings call, and they are also usually the junior guys of the big fund houses. So
So the
not
guy
not
who's
good.
telling me on YouTube Shorts that a particular penny stock will go 20x, are you saying that he's not 100% the most reliable source?
No, scammers are equally efficient both in the US and
Fair
in
enough.
India.
Good. Good. Thank
That-
you. Because I would
that-
still love to be able to keep trusting those guys.
so that's how Jordan Belfort started,
Hmm?
pushing penny stocks. That's the same everywhere. All that has changed is that they've moved to Telegram. But then वो वहाँ पे भी हुआ है, यहाँ पे भी हुआ है.
Hmm.
So scamming is a perfectly efficient market. The stock market
Scamming
is
is a perfectly efficient market. Yeah. Oh God. That is one sentence that we can go into like for hours and hours. But yeah. My story too
yeah.
is on monopolies. There
Big one.
is a lot of antitrust activity that's going on.
Yeah.
Not I can't say in real time today, Sunday evening as we're recording this. But there's in the same courthouse in the US, there is one case going on against Google. which is now convicted of being a monopolist in the search engine market. And now this is the remedies phase, where the government is arguing what Google should do to basically not be a monopoly anymore. Because it's also seen to have abused its monopoly. It's not just that it is a monopoly, it has abused that power. It is, and despite the Trump administration coming in, the government is still arguing that it needs to be broken up in some key ways. In the same building, there is a case going on against Meta to show that Meta is a monopoly, which is a bit more murky, but there's a lot of movement interesting stuff that happened this week. So let's talk about Meta first. Meta is basically being accused of being a monopoly in the social space, social networking.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody can define social networking. Nobody knows what social media is. What is social media? Is it messaging? So the government, the DOJ, Department of Justice, came up with a new definition of social media, which again was a one-line definition that nobody could understand. Who is the competition? Is WhatsApp supposed to be the competition that it bought out? Yes, there are emails. There are lots and lots of emails
Right.
from within Facebook showing that yes, WhatsApp needs to be bought to basically sort of kill the competition. It'll get too big.
Mm-hmm.
Instagram, same. Lots and lots of emails. So the case took an interesting turn this week when the Instagram co-founder took the witness stand and he basically blasted Mark Zuckerberg. He said that, look, these guys. So Facebook has been arguing in court that, look, Instagram and WhatsApp are as big as they are because of us, which is a fairly, easy enough to circumstantially see that Instagram might not have gotten as big as it did if it didn't have the heft of Facebook behind it. So it's saying that we are the innovators,
Mm-hmm.
right? And since you can't define social media, what social media is, we're not a monopoly. We just bought some companies and they grew huge,
Right.
right? Then Kevin Sostrom, the Instagram guy, comes on the witness stand and says, no, they bought us to kill us. And Instagram is as big as it is despite Facebook, not because of it. And he basically put Mark Zuckerberg on blast. Again, obviously circumstantial.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm seeing a lot of chatter that, yeah, the mood has sort of changed after this guy came and said, look, no, 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 no. And the WhatsApp guys, so they were chillers anyhow. They never wanted to sell. They were like, yeah, yeah, we don't want to take over the world. We don't care about global scale. But then you offer someone $19 billion, everything changes, right? So, yeah, so both these guys have sort of said that no, Facebook is buying up stuff to acquire monopolistic power and kill the competition.
Right.
Right? Whatever is the biggest threat, buy it off. And there are multiple emails. So this is the case that's going on. Google being in the remedy space is even more interesting because the government has now said what it wants Google to do. So basically, one interesting thing: the lawyer for the Department of Justice is saying is describing what is Google's. He calls it the vicious cycle. That Google pays billions of dollars to be the default search engine practically everywhere. It
Mm-hmm.
is paying some $20 billion a year to be the main search engine
Default.
in Safari,
Yeah. Right.
default search engine in Safari, and therefore it gets to be everywhere. So it collects much better data than everyone else. Therefore, it makes more money. Therefore, it can afford more to be more the default in more spaces. And in fact, turns out this week also it was, I think Bloomberg found out that Google is paying Samsung a ton of money to make Gemini AI the default AI search engine on Galaxy phones.
Right.
So even after they've been caught doing this, and even after the DOJ has told them to stop doing this, they're still doing it. Old habits.
And same
So
playbook. Yeah.
same playbook, exactly the same playbook.
Hmm.
So the Department of Justice has asked for three things to break up Google or to reduce its monopoly power.
Mm-hmm.
One, it has said no such deals, no deals for prime search engine placement. Second is a big one. Chrome is the biggest browser in the world. Some 4 billion users, 4 billion plus users.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, this is crazy. Half the world. I don't know where these numbers are coming from. But yeah, half the world apparently is using Chrome, literally, including all the newborns. Half of all the newborns, I guess. And so that is one. They are directly using Chrome. But also, Google has sort of built the engine, the browser engine, Chromium, that Most browsers in the world are using. Outside of Firefox, outside of Safari, everything
Hmm.
else practically. Microsoft Edge, the new Internet Explorer, is running on Chromium. Chrome obviously is running on Chromium. So the backend of of every browser is Google developed.
Right.
DOJ wants Google to Department of Justice in the US wants Google to completely divest Chrome, sell it off. The question is who will buy it? Because a browser only makes sense as a secondary business model.
Right.
Nobody's, well, maybe because of the business model as it exists, nobody's paying money for browsers. Netscape wanted to charge money in the 90s. Microsoft launched Internet Explorer and just flooded it everywhere, and we had a huge antitrust case,
Right.
which led to a lot of things. Microsoft was not broken up, but there were lots of remedies, and Microsoft backed off on a few things, and led to, funnily enough, companies like Google then thriving.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
You can draw a straight line.
yeah, you can draw a straight line, right? So, Chrome being sold off is a fair bit of a hammer. That would be a very interesting thing. They're basically saying that you're collecting too much data from Chrome that is
Hmm.
going back into your search engine, and there's way too much power happening.
Right.
The third is also interesting. They're saying Google should license practically all of its search data from the search index to its results
Hmm.
to anyone who wants it at some marginal cost. Figure out a reasonable cost. So basically you have so much data that nobody else has
Hmm.
that there is no way we can make a level playing field. You have way too much of a head start. Like I was reading this on The Verge, and the example they use, the analogy they use is very interesting. That like there's no point of two people who are fast enough running a marathon if one of them is at the 25.5 mile mark already. So how do you practically bring both of them back to the start? That you say that Google can't exclusively use its own search data anymore. It should be forced to give access to anyone who wants it.
Right.
And yeah, so effectively Google becomes a white label product that anyone can buy. So yeah, so these are the remedies being proposed. Google is scared. I think they might just have assumed that if they donate some money to Donald Trump's presidential library or whatever,
Hmm.
being seen as very business friendly, this won't happen. But the case is going on, and the remedies phase is still going on just as strongly under the Trump Department of Justice as it was under Biden. In fact, the case against Meta was first brought under the Trump one Department of Justice.
Right.
So yeah, a lot of activity going on in two different rooms in the same courthouse.
This brought
Thoughts?
back memory. This was in the 1930s, I think. I think so. The US Supreme Court, under the Sherman Antitrust Act, on the same day, passed two verdicts. One was to break up Standard Oil, and the other was to break up Big Tobacco. Both those verdicts were passed on the same day by the US Supreme Court, sometime in the 1930s. Imagine that. Imagine, like, sort of war or whatever. That was probably the most influential day for US businesses and maybe global businesses, that one day, because it still has, those waves are still washing over us of everything that was set in motion on that day by the breaking up of Standard Oil, by the breaking up of Big Tobacco.
Yeah, and even the next one, the AT&T breakup, that was in the 70s, 60s. The
70s.
Bell, Ma Bell
Yeah,
breakup,
Marvel. And then, yeah, which led to the birth of the entire semiconductor or the
Silicon
Silicon
Valley.
Valley, yeah, the valley
Hmm.
itself. And then Microsoft breaking up led to Google and even Facebook coming into existence. Otherwise, they wouldn't have happened. Really cool. That's the first thing I could think of. Second, I there was correspondence between the Instagram founder and Zuckerberg when they were negotiating the sale of Instagram. Unbelievable emails, unbelievable. I wrote a post about this way back when. I'll share the link with you. You can put it in the show notes
Yeah.
of just both of them sparring. You know, it is genuinely one of the coolest things I've read, especially when you have subtext. That's how I interpreted it. So I actually put the screenshots of the mails, and then the captions is how I interpreted the subtext. They're sparring. They're actually sparring. Wait, let me pull it up. I am particularly proud of one line that I just remembered towards the end when it seemed like the deal is either going to go through or about to fall apart. Either ways, they're at an inflection point. We get to the haggling stage where in street markets the buyer pretends to walk off, forcing the seller to
Hmm.
chase after them. My mom would approve. That's what Zuckerberg did. In the end, it's really cool, the whole email exchange. For folks who are listening, please look it up on my newsletter. It was really cool stuff. So that was second. Third, do you see this actually panning out? Honestly, in
I
this
do. I do.
political
I do.
climate and where we are in business history at least, do you see this
Yeah.
actually panning out?
I think either they preempt and do some face saving stuff and hive off some things,
Mm-hmm.
right? Separate companies at least, and then start the process of showing, oh yeah, we're going to divest, sell off, blah blah blah, something or the other. Otherwise, some of these things will happen. I do feel that they are quite convinced that these companies are way too powerful now.
Okay, so you don't think this is just going to go away?
I don't, because
But
the case has gone on so strongly, and even in the remedy space, I now do believe that something will happen in
for
the next
Google
month.
specifically, and what about Facebook?
Facebook is fuzzy. Is it a monopoly? If you ask me, right, personally, I'm not a whatever antitrust lawyer, but if
Mhm.
I, for me, Facebook being linked to Instagram, being linked to WhatsApp, and now shoving threads down my face is absolutely way too much power. It is all of social media for us, right? There is no other practical social media that we use today. The messaging, the sharing, Twitter being different, of course, but Twitter, I wouldn't say most of India doesn't use Twitter. It has outsized influence because the
Mm-hmm.
media is there, the IT cell is there. But yeah, practically what we use is Instagram and WhatsApp,
WhatsApp.
and 90-year-olds are all on Facebook looking at AI stuff. So yeah, it is absolutely in India, it's a bigger monopoly, more of a monopoly than it would be in the US
Mm-hmm.
because there is iMessage competing with WhatsApp. But that's not the case that's going on in the US. The Indian ecosystem is obviously not. Would I be happy if they were divested? Absolutely. I think I would get much less WhatsApp spam. But will it happen? I don't know. It's fuzzy. The definition of social media is still very, very fuzzy.
Right.
Can they prove that yes, these companies were bought to, kill competition? Sure. Does that mean that Meta is a monopoly? Does it mean Mark Zuckerberg is not a nice person? Sure. Does that mean it's a monopoly? I don't know.
What's your best case outcome for Meta, for Facebook?
Break them all up.
How would WhatsApp pay the bills?
Yeah, go back to charging like $1 a month or something, whatever they were originally planning. WhatsApp is now the new SMS. It's so much spam.
Yeah.
Like it's everything starts out as a person to person platform. You move. Email is now all spam. SMS is now all spam. Now WhatsApp is increasingly spam.
Mhm.
So yeah, break it up. Absolutely break it up. I see no negatives. It's more competition. Maybe Facebook will then improve Messenger
Hmm.
if there is actual competition. Right. Maybe Instagram will then hive off Reels into a separate app and focus more on Instagram as a messaging between friends thing
Right.
rather than showing creators everywhere. Right. So yeah, I see no downsides, including to these companies. Their shareholders will make more money. They'll unlock more value. Yeah. What do you think?
I was saying, isn't it unfortunate when you can't decide which of Zuckerberg's creations has inflicted the most damage on humanity, whether it's Facebook or WhatsApp or Instagram or whatever the fuck is coming next.
Yeah. All of them. All of them. Can't
They've
pick.
all done truly terrible things, and I can't tell
Wow. Yeah, that's a good question. Which?
which is the worst of the three
Oh
that we
man,
mentioned.
that's a very profound question. But then, exactly, like all three of them being in the hands of one man who, yes, this is subjective opinion, but he is not the nicest man in the world. Right. One is a general view of billionaires, but even among billionaires, there are billionaires. Right. There are classes of billionaires in terms of behavior. This is not a
Mhm.
man I would want controlling all our modes of communication, practically, whether it's public, whether it's private. So yeah, break it up.
Not that public opinion is in Zuckerberg's favor, but I can think of a surefire way of corralling public opinion conclusively in one direction. I think the time is ripe for Aaron Sorkin to make the sequel to The Social Network.
No, I think that fight between Musk and Zuckerberg should actually happen.
The fist fight or the physical altercation
The
that one of
MMA
the
fight,
two
yeah,
chickened out
yeah,
of because of having no prior experience. And that was such a conflicting time for me because I found myself on Mark Zuckerberg's side and it made me feel ick.
yeah. I know that feeling. It's like you've seen that meme, right? The worst person in the world just made a great point.
That was fun. Yeah, it was funny.
So I think that
But
fight needs to happen. And that
I would,
fight needs to not be choreographed. That fight needs to be genuine and just keep going. Keep going.
I would still want to see a sequel to The Social Network so badly.
And that movie was so good
Yeah.
that I saw this tweet where this guy was like, I've always hated Jesse Eisenberg. Right. I just never liked the guy till I realized he's an amazing guy. He did such a great portrayal of Mark Zuckerberg
Zuckerberg. Yeah.
that it's given me the ick, to use a very Gen Z phrase.
Really cool movie.
So yeah, I do think that happen.
I
I
have
watch
a
it together.
recommendation and then we'll close with that. There is a now defunct YouTube channel called Lessons from the Screenplay. They break down the bar scene of The Social Network to show how Sorkin writes. The conversation between Zuckerberg and his girlfriend in the bar. The first time they meet, they're both having two different conversations at the same time.
Hmm.
It was familiar to people who might have watched some of Sorkin's previous work, like The West Wing or whatever. But here it was beautifully self-contained, and it showed both their personalities, showed how they're on different wavelengths. They're talking about different things. Different things matter to them. Really established both characters without saying much. Oh no, there is a
That
lot
was a scene
that.
where she goes on a monologue about victimhood, right? Nerd victimhood.
No. That comes at the end.
Hmm.
This is
Movie in a while.
It's
It's been a
great,
while.
and it's really held up well. The Winklevoss twins and all of that, all the characterization, Andrew Garfield getting shafted, it's beautiful, all of it,
It's such a
really nice.
fantastic movie. I'm gonna
Yeah.
watch it again. I need to watch this again. I need to watch all of Silicon Valley again, like all of it.
Now you have to link to the middle out scene just to refresh everyone's memory, where the lead character has the epiphany of middle out compression because of their. You don't
Oh
remember
yeah,
that?
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What algo
You
was
have to
that?
link to that.
No, my favorite scene I think was very early on where they're at this. They simulated this TechCrunch seminar, right? TechCrunch Disrupt, which was
This
this
up, yeah.
annual startup event, and
Hmm.
every startup is coming on stage and saying we want to change the world.
Yeah.
We want to change the world through databases. We want to change the world through MySQL, whatever, blah, 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 injections into new code or something. We want to change the world through Python scripts that, blah, blah, blah. Just such a fantastic.
That's a
And
great
of
show.
course, what is that guy's name? Russ Feingold. Russ Feingold, I think.
Hmm.
Oh man. So they show him as a VC type.
Yeah.
And it is so genuinely like so many VC types that I have met. That guy, there's this one scene where the main guy is like, yeah, so this is our plan, this is our burn rate, and now over the next few months we'll start building revenue. And this guy just revenue. No. You do not focus on revenue. Like why? Why would you want revenue? Because that's how we pay the bills. No, but if you have any revenue, then investors will ask you about more revenue. Then it'll be a
Right.
percentage of revenue. If you don't have revenue, you're pre-revenue. The world is your oyster. This is so true. This is so true of so many easy types that I've met in life. Oh God,
It's still true after all these years.
it's still true.
This is great
No matter
writing.
how
My
much they say about EBITDA, but no.
my favorite character is Gavin Belson. Just
Uh,
the perfect asshole. I love his character. I love it.
Yeah,
His
I will
pettiness,
watch.
his jealousy, all of it. It's just amazing. His greed, his ruthlessness, amazing, amazing. One of the best villains in any HBO series, and that is saying something.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. So that's great. I think
yeah.
we can end on Gavin Wilson. That's a wonderful high note.
So after beeping out one name, which I had no reason to get into, another very rich guy. Yeah, that's that. Nitesh can continue his influencer era in Rajasthan. Maybe a week later, he will be on one of those hoardings,
Selling paint.
selling, selling bisque farm biscuits, which I still haven't been able to try because they're nowhere in Delhi. So yeah,
This was fun. See you next week.
this was fun.
Bye
See you
bye.
guys. Bye bye.